He was sworn in 9 months ago as the 50th, 50th police superintendent and second civilian to be appointed since Orlando Wilson was named in 1960. Mayor Richard M. Daley made it very clear when he appointed our guest speaker that his mission was, and I quote, to further reduce crime in Chicago and to increase confidence among the people in our city in the actions of the Chicago Police Department, end of quote. Our guest today is a 23-year veteran of the FBI. Before joining the Chicago Police Department, he was assigned as special agent in charge of the FBI's Philadelphia office. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the City Club of Chicago, the Superintendent of Police for the Chicago Police Department, Jody Weis. Superintendent?
Jay, thanks a lot. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here today and to talk about the Chicago Police Department's efforts to try and make Chicago a safer place. Just a little bit about me, and I really hate talking about myself. I did serve in the Bureau for 23 years. Prior to that, I was a captain in the United States Army for about 6 years. My last duty assignment was Philadelphia, where I was the special agent in charge. Before that, I was the special agent in charge of the Criminal Division in Los Angeles. Prior to that, I was in charge of the Human Resource Division back at headquarters and also Office of Professional Responsibility. Prior to that, I got to be an assistant special agent in charge of Chicago. So I did have 3 years here back from 2000 to 2003. Before that, I was in Phoenix for about 5 years, and I started my career in the FBI in Houston, where I was an agent for about 8 years, focusing primarily on violent crime. So anyway, that was a brief history that led me here. About a little bit more than a year ago, I started the process. And it is truly an honor and a privilege to be here. I was honored to accept Mayor Daley's appointment to lead what I consider to be the best police department in the country. And nothing could be more important than my desire to continue to make Chicago safe for every resident, every visitor, and every child. When I took on this responsibility last fall, I said I wanted to be a superintendent for a police department that works for all the people in every community. I come before you today with a commitment to fight crime, knowing that crime remains a challenge for Chicago, and too many neighborhoods are plagued by the gangs, the guns, and the drugs. Like you and every Chicagoan, I'm deeply concerned about this. That's why every day I get up and I come to work asking myself, what can we do better to fight crime? What can we do better to make a difference in this city? As a police department, we will achieve real successes by challenging ourselves to improve what we do at every level. The criminals are constantly looking to improve their trade craft. We must also improve ours to stay ahead of them. There is no room for complacency. I am proud to lead a team of more than 13,500 well-trained, dedicated, and professional police officers who share our vision to rid every neighborhood of the violence that plagues many of this country's major cities, not just Chicago. The sad, cold reality is that reducing gang violence is perhaps our greatest challenge. The gang culture continues to be the driving force behind the vast majority of violence, with more than half the murders committed by gangs. And these are the ones that we know for sure are committed by gangs. Less than 1 in 5 of the homicides involve strangers. What's even more troubling is that 90% of the offenders have criminal backgrounds, and more than 75% of the victims have criminal backgrounds, which says it's a vicious, vicious cycle where today's offender could easily be tomorrow's victim. Gangs in Chicago come in many forms. Some are entrenched, well-organized criminal organizations that are far more advanced and far more violent than anything we've seen before. Others are small factions who operate on a particular street corner with no ties to any national group. While small, they can be just as deadly. Gang members in Chicago span every age, every gender, and every race. Their membership is approximately 75,000 strong. They easily outnumber the police department. They use guns and violence to protect drug turf so they can sell more drugs, to buy more guns, to protect more turf. Staying ahead of the curve requires us to constantly evaluate our practices and develop new strategies. With good programs and professionally proactive police officers, we will continue to address crime, taking back our streets and communities from those who wish to control them through fear, violence, and intimidation. We are working to break this vicious cycle, but it requires all of the resources that local, state, and federal agencies can bring to bear. For example, we've asked for the federal government's help to increase investigations that go after the traffickers who bring narcotics into Chicago to either sell or distribute here in the Midwest. Reducing violence in Chicago depends on precise coordination, seamless communication, and sound execution. It is no longer our responsibility to simply react to crime. We must be able to anticipate crime in order to prevent it from happening at all. That's our goal. I recently announced a proposed reorganization that will better align police resources with our priorities to ensure that we are incorporating best practices and working efficiently. To successfully reduce gang violence, we are developing a crime-fighting strategy that can move resources to the right place based on solid and timely information, intelligence-led policing. We are forming a new unit, the new Mobile Strike Force, whose mission will be to disrupt gang crimes through physical arrests, search warrants, and gang seizures. Leadership and strong supervisory oversight will be stressed. Integrity checks, personnel performance audits, and ensuring the supervisors are in direct contact with their personnel. They're on the streets with them. Will ensure that this unit is both accountable and credible. This new team will be deployed through the use of intelligence with a focus on gang suppression. The unit will operate closely with the Targeted Response Unit, gang, tactical gun, and saturation teams. We will also continue to rely on our camera surveillance network to assist in our investigations. They can be used in both a proactive and reactive mode to provide our investigators with immediate information to assist in solving crimes. We have put up approximately 150 cameras this year, and we have more than 700 in place throughout the city. Area narcotic enforcement teams and deployed gang teams are working with the community and the Narcotic and Gang Investigation Section to build cases against the criminal drug conspiracies that are the root cause of the violence that plagues far too many of our neighborhoods. Our Narcotics and Gang Investigation Section has taken an aggressive and targeted approach this year in dismantling the open-air drug markets. This year to date, we have shut down 48 open-air drug markets, identified 704 drug offenders, and made 641 arrests. The Department's Crime Prevention and Information Center, called CPIC, continues to be a driving source of intelligence, staffed by more than 40 law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, the Illinois State Police, the Coast Guard, and more than 30 suburban police departments. It is a role model throughout the world. Scotland Yard has come by and visited our CPIC to take it back to them as a role model that they can staff. To better analyze threats, I created a counterterrorism and intelligence division. This division combines street-gathered information with that obtained through both physical and electronic surveillance, proffers, and other sources of intelligence to enhance our airport securities, public transportations, bomb and arson, and our homeland security operations. Intelligence is further analyzed to ensure that we are focusing our criminal operations on those targets that pose the greatest threat to our city. Our helicopter and marine unit continue to work to support our law enforcement operations, from providing direct assistance to officers and districts to homeland security missions. The Marine Unit recently added 2 31-foot Defender safe boats that currently patrol 81 miles of lakefront. The Marine Unit officers answered 500 distress calls on average annually, and the unit has documented 24 rescues, 76 dive missions, and has performed nearly 6,000 individual homeland security checks. Next generation technology is a true illustration of the innovation, the ambition, and the creativity that is thriving in the Chicago Police Department. Since becoming superintendent, we have expanded the deployment of the automated license reader plates to all districts within the city. This tool has assisted us in reading over 18 million license plates. We can load a particular license plate in the system and have it search as this vehicle is driven down the streets of Chicago. We have expanded the in-car camera installation to over 200 vehicles, and we will have every beat officer in the city completed by the end of this year. This is a valuable tool that ensures officer and motorist safety, as well as the integrity of the traffic stop. Knowing where officers are located is vital to officer safety and was a major recommendation of the 9/11 Commission. The city is currently expanding the capability of automated vehicle location, or GPS if you would, to all departmental vehicles. To date, we have installed 1,500 such systems in our vehicles. And I would like to stress the point on this is it's not just to locate vehicles to help in dispatch. The second phase of this will allow for fire and rescue to be notified automatically if an airbag should be deployed, if a car should roll over, if an officer is hurt, perhaps dying on the street. It'll automatically notify dispatch and help will come. Through innovative crime-fighting strategies and the use of our technology, our officers are pursuing the gangs, guns, and drugs relentlessly. However, fighting crime requires more than listing accomplishments, using technology, or reorganizing bureaus. It requires a commitment to create a culture of leadership. With every initiative we take, leadership and supervision is the key. Over the last 10 months, we have worked hard to implement initiatives that build upon our department's commitment to accountability and individual leadership. One of my first acts was to take all of the components of the department that relate to training, accountability, and discipline and place them under one office, the newly formed Bureau of Professional Standards. For the first time, we have introduced departmental core values meant to stress important themes that the public expects from their police officers. On a departmental level, we have implemented weekly crime analysis review meetings and management accountability sessions, which together examine crime and management trends in every district. We recently introduced the performance recognition system, which allows supervisors to track on a variety of metrics, including complaints, medical usage, and attendance, right from their desktop. With regard to leadership, recently promoted sergeants received a full works training on how to move from a police officer to a frontline supervisor. For those of you in this room who have made such a move, I think you understand how tough that is. One day you're one of the boys, the next minute you're leading them. We also established a speaker series with a focus on leadership, overcoming challenges with outside speakers with proven successes in their portfolios. Nobody wants to hear from me. They'd much rather hear from somebody who truly is an expert in their field. Community trust, I think you all will agree, is probably critical. To build trust in the department's actions, I personally met with many religious and community leaders from across the city to ensure them that we are doing all that we can to keep communities safe and prevent misconduct of any kind by our police officers. I believe we have made significant progress towards building a better department and stronger relationships with the communities we serve, because successful policing requires a department that is committed to leadership and accountability at every level. We cannot fight crime alone. This is not just a job for every police officer, it's a job for every resident. That's why we've reached out to the community organizations, the faith-based leaders, businesses, and residents to help in our efforts to protect our neighborhoods and especially our children. It requires a commitment from parents, teachers, ministers, coaches, and our elected officials. Even many of you here in this room are business leaders. More companies in Chicago can seek out opportunities to invest in the communities where their customers and their employees live. For example, Allstate Insurance has contributed more than $1 million to fund neighborhood-based crime prevention strategies. Their contributions have saved lives. More companies in Chicago can help in our efforts to do that. Sponsoring community development initiatives or after-school programs in high-crime neighborhoods is a valuable and rewarding contribution. Supporting our efforts to put ex-offenders to work may seem unconventional, but it's a key part to the overall strategy to reduce crime and eliminate the conditions that breed crime. Helping to assimilate these individuals back into society can make a difference. I firmly believe that fighting crime is everyone's job. While we are asking the community for its ongoing support, we must ensure that they receive our support in return. We are working to remove the barriers that sometimes place the community and the police at odds with one another. We must ensure that our actions are based upon respect, compassion, and a sense of service to those we protect. But it's not enough for these discussions to involve the leaders. We must push these discussions into communities so everyone understands our commitment. And that's why I've asked members of my command staff and CAPS to organize an outreach strategy in the 5 patrol areas to engage the community in honest dialogue about strengthening our relationships. We need to make sure that our commitment to strong partnership reaches into the heart of every community. It's not enough for community leaders and residents to understand our commitment to strengthening bonds and promoting a mutual understanding. They must become a part of that commitment. The police department relies on those strong partnerships with the community. The CAP strategy and philosophy for community policing continue to be the cornerstone of our mission to fight crime and build partnerships. Now more than ever, the Chicago Police Department is dedicated to the concept of community policing. Community policing is the fundamental part of the department's crime reduction strategy. We will continue to undertake initiatives and implement programs to increase its effectiveness. Working together through community policing, we can make our city safer and contribute to the quality of life for all of our city's residents and visitors. The department will continue work to fight crime and protect the safety and security of Chicago's residents through increased training, improved accountability, innovative crime-fighting strategies, as well as the continued use of technology and strong community partnerships. We will work together to make our neighborhoods safer. All of these strategies must work in harmony with one another. We must be strategic and well-equipped to take on these challenges. As we sit here this afternoon, thousands of brave men and women are placing themselves directly in harm's way to make our city safer. They're confiscating guns, they're investigating drug markets, they're intervening in domestic disputes, they're safeguarding our children. And let's not forget, 2 of them gave their lives this year as they served this city and this country. As I mentioned at the start of this speech, it is an honor and a privilege to lead the Chicago Police Department, and I am humbled to have been given this opportunity by Mayor Daley. I have served in Houston, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, and I truly believe that the Chicago Police Department to be the finest law enforcement agency in this country. Every day, I'm astounded by the bravery and the heroic deeds of these men and women who will continue to help to keep all of Chicago safe. Thank you for your time and your support for the Chicago Police Department, and I would be glad to take any questions as long as Jay allows me that privilege.
The first question, because of neatness. Maggie, you win. Maggie, raise your hand. I will use this as a sample. This is from Maggie from Loyola. Are you taking any new steps to decrease the violence around the public schools?
We have a really good relationship with the Chicago Public Schools. We've recently integrated their camera systems into ours so that we can monitor what's going around the schools real time. So we're constantly reaching out for new ideas. For example, every month our commanders will reach with the principals in their respective districts. They'll sit down and talk to them, discuss any new problems or trends that they see emerging that we need to readjust our strategies. Our TAC teams will drop by once a day just to check in on the school and make sure everything's okay. So we realize that protecting the young men and women going to school is one of our top priorities, and we do it through open dialogue, we do it through increased technologies, and we make sure that's one of our top efforts.
Okay, this is from Richard. I can't. Concalia? Close? Close enough. What additional? This is, and he's a CAPS beat facilitator. What additional steps will the Chicago Police Department take to help CAPS prevent gangs and drugs from spreading?
We've recently realigned some of our efforts with CAPS. We've tried to make sure that there's always a sergeant there, the same sergeant, so that when people come to meetings, if they have problems or if they have issues or they have concerns, they can work together to get a decision made at that time, or at least as a follow-back. When I spoke to a lot of members in the community, there was a constant theme that while CAPS was an outstanding program, oftentimes no decisions were made. Personally, I know how precious our time is, and I would rather go to a meeting where we have a decision maker at the table who can get back to you and said, yes, we are going to do this and we'll implement it next week. That did cause us to cut back some of the officers who were going, but we're hoping that the meetings will be more effective and efficient as to preventing gangs and drugs from spreading. The information that we can gather from the community, I can't overstate how important it is. We have a lot of police officers who are waiting to respond, and while we try to get ahead of the game, we try to get to where the crime is, we try to get to the locations where if we suspect there might be a gang retaliation, we want to have officers in place to stop that from happening. I cannot overstate the critical need that exists for the public to reach out for the police department. The public is our eyes and ears. I mentioned 75,000 gang members, and people say, well, how would you ever compete with that? Well, it's real easy if you have the cooperation of 3 million citizens across this city who can look out their window and feel comfortable to call the police department. I think through our CAPS program, we're developing those comfort strategies with the residents so that they do feel comfortable. They know the police officers. They know them because they interact with them on a monthly basis. So they feel comfortable. They'll make that phone call. We can respond and hopefully eradicate some of the crime that the city is facing.
Okay, this is from Bob Morrow. What has been the a softball for you, Mr. Superintendent? What has been the most challenging aspect of this job with the city of Chicago? You can't talk about this thing today or anything else. This could be a toughie.
This is, it's a tough question because of the enormity of the job. And by that I mean I'm used to working in an office where I can have all the employees come before me. In Philadelphia, you had about 300 agents and 200 support folks. And I could go to any one of the auditoriums in the area, bring everybody in, talk about stuff, answer any questions, dispel rumors, make sure that people knew exactly where I was coming from, get to interact with me one-on-one. I could walk around the office and go out and visit the resident agencies. And it was very, very easy for me to interact with people one-on-one. I underestimated the challenges of getting my message out to the Chicago Police Department. It's difficult. I'm not a huge fan of streaming video. I would much rather interact with people, take questions, and sit down and talk to them one-on-one. It's just too big. I mean, you have 13,500 officers, a couple hundred or a couple thousand civilians. It's literally impossible to get to see everyone, as Terry Hillard will certainly attest to, sitting in the audience. You've got 25 districts. It's a 24/7 operation. You've got 3 roll calls in each one of them, 2 shifts for each one. It is difficult. So I'm leaning more to doing the streaming videos just to get my message out. At least people can see me talking. They hopefully think I can put a sentence together. But it's just tough. That's probably been the hardest part of my job because I really like interacting with our employees. I really like sitting down and talking to people, not just about law enforcement stuff, but just things in general. And that's been very challenging. If there was some way I could come up with a better way of doing it, I certainly would. I've tried town hall meetings. I've gone out to areas. We've done everything we can, and we had a town hall program with the officers where I spoke to about maybe 1,500, and I felt really good about that until I sat down and thought, well, gee, just another 12,000 to go. But that's probably been the hardest part of my job, just getting my message out to the men and women. In any law enforcement agency, I think in any uniformed service, rumors run rampant. I always tell this story because I'd only been here for about a month, and I had to get a tooth pulled. And I was feeling okay. My mouth was shut full of Novocaine, and I took a couple of Vicodin, and my wife said, are you hungry? I said, yeah, I feel okay. So she goes, what can you eat? I said, I could probably eat a pizza. I said, we were staying up in this area. So we went over to Uno's, and I was sitting with one of my sergeants, and I was eating a pizza, and he goes, you're not going to believe this. People are saying you're out doing DUI stops up in the 16th district. I said, I'm right here. And then a reporter called. I said, what are you doing? I hear you're doing DUI stops. I said, I'm sitting here eating pizza. But it's amazing the information that people will run with, and it's challenging sometimes to overcome that.
Thank you. By the way, former Superintendent Hilliard, how about a round of applause? Thank you, sir. This comes from Mike Bauer. With so many crime stemming from drug trafficking, but the penmanship's got to improve, and drug money, what are your thoughts about legalization of marijuana and other illegal substances? Purely an informative question, correct?
Those type of questions will always get you in trouble if you answer them in a public forum. I think you do have to look at more creative ways that we're doing things. There's a lot of discussion about this on both sides. I would probably leave this to perhaps the politicians to make that decision, or some statesmen to really move forward on this. I think the one thought that always comes to my mind, when I was working drugs in Houston, a kilo of cocaine went somewhere between like $18,000 or $20,000, and I don't think the price has changed that much today, which makes me think that maybe we aren't having the impact that we could have had. Because if we truly were, just going back to the old supply and demand theory, the prices should have gone way up, and I think sometimes it's maybe even a tad cheaper. So I think we have to really sit and look at our war on drug strategy and say, is it making a difference? What can we do to be more effective? Do we need stiffer penalties? And I would be open to exploring any of them.
You're on a roll. This is from Josh Hyatt, Illinois Coalition for Immigrant Rights. The last time beats were redrawn and police redeployed or based on crime stats was 1984 under Harold Washington. Are you planning to examine whether the beats and the deployment are new beats and deployment are needed?
Yeah, at the hearing the other day for budget, I kept stressing this a lot. There seems to be a very strong desire by a lot of folks on City Council to look at this. It's a delicate balance because you have a finite number of officers, and you don't have to be a mathematic genius to recognize if you take from one area to fill another one, it's going to create a void. We have a set number of officers, but actually the research we did showed that the actual beat alignment maybe was even before this. In fact, the research we did showed 1978. The city has evolved so much in the 5 years while I've been gone. I think you have to look at redistricting and realignment, or at least a better strategy to fit our threat, because it's been 30 years. Communities have changed. You know, what was set up, 30 years ago, that community may be totally different. You may not need as many police officers there, or unfortunately, you might need a whole lot more police officers there. But then you also need to look at, are we doing it the best way as we can? Should we get on totally threat-based policing, where you put people where the problem is and not be allocated to any one particular beat or in the district and move people around? The point I'm trying to make is I think it's time that we take a hard look at how we deploy our resources and make sure we're putting the cops on the dots, if you will. It's critical. We can't have people in location just because it's always been like that. You have to look where the threat is. You have to evaluate under a multitude of factors, and we've got to move our resources where we need them. So this is not going to be an easy process. We've looked at some resource allocation models, but now the key thing is looking at the methodology. Would it be creating more beats? Would it be creating new districts? Would we have to build new police stations? Some models that I've looked at, it's like you can't have a district with 800 police officers. So clearly you need a second district built. That takes infrastructure money. So as much as you'd like to say, yeah, we'll redistrict tomorrow, and a good portion of the folks will be happy, and probably a good portion of the folks will be unhappy. But there's a lot more to it than simply putting people in various locations. But it is something that we are definitely looking at, only because of the time that has passed and the changes in the communities in Chicago.
By the way, that's not a new issue. I think it started in 1837. Here we go. Jim Montana, are you concerned that Chicago's high murder rate will hurt the city's chances to secure the Olympics?
Well, I'm concerned about the Chicago's high murder rate with, actually totally absence from the Olympics. I mean, I'm trying to focus on seeing what we can do to reduce the murder rate. Just for point of record, though, we have enjoyed a phenomenal murder rate the past 4 years. If you look at the past 45 years, the actual average homicide rate for Chicago is 723, which I found to be truly shocking. It was tough in the 70s. There were a lot of homicides back then, and we certainly don't want to go back to that time. But I was at a recent conference, and it was amazing. We're really at a time of a tale of two cities, or tale of multiple cities. Some cities are experiencing extraordinary lows in violent crime. Others are going up. Los Angeles is down, New York is up, we're up. Kansas City is really spiked. Indianapolis has had some issues. One common theme that we've seen is that where there's been spikes in violence, a great deal of it can be attributed to youth-related crimes, both for aggravated batteries with firearms where people are shooting. I like to use the term less than lethal shootings, because sometimes the hospitals do a great job for us, but we're seeing that somewhat across the country, where young people are getting more involved in criminal activity. And this is really sad, but a lot of that is outside the ability of the police department to fix. You're looking at a lot of social and economical factors. You're looking at poverty. You're looking at unemployment. You're looking at the economy. Unfortunately, some families are not as functional as other families. There's got to be more outreach in those areas to help bring some of our young folks along. We can never simply arrest our way out of a problem. The system gets clogged up, people get released too quickly, and you just can't work it that way. You've got to get more for the root cause of why are people solving their problems with a handgun. Why is it that people at a party, which everybody is invited to, everybody's a friendly, and a young man is blocking the airflow from a fan. His friend, I emphasize his friend, says, hey, you're blocking the airflow, and he gets shot for that. How they got to that, I don't know. We're friends, people who know each other, are committing those acts of violence. That's something that is really outside the scope of the police department. That's a problem for society to handle, and that's something I think we really need to look at too, as a reentry program to make sure folks have the opportunity to get back into society, and also an intervention program. I think we've got to do more for our youth to help them understand how to manage crisis, how to have conflict resolution by not picking up a pistol or not picking up an AK-47, solving it by discussing with these things. And I think that might mean some people are going to have to fill the roles of parents. But you know what? Every child that is lost is lost. You'll never get them back. A child that pulls a trigger, he's lost or she's lost because her life is now ruined. And as a society, I think we really all have to come together and make sure that we're doing everything we can for these young folks who are truly out, faced with some challenges, are getting the support they need to try and be successful and not worried about just living. They should be worrying about trying out for the football team or when they're going to pass their driver's license, not if they'll live to 18. With so many of them, that's their biggest challenge.
Two more questions left. This one's from Peter Scosi. The Chicago Police Department received such great recognition in the media this summer, which is par for the course, for conducting pedestrian crosswalk stings. Do you have any plans to do more of those? Preferably not in this neighborhood.
We'll work closely with Tom Byrne on the Chicago Department of Transportation, and we'll always take advantage of something like this. In certain neighborhoods, this is a very important issue. In other areas, it might not be quite rise to the same level, but I think it's great to work closely with other departments. This has been a great operation with Tom, and I enjoyed working with him on that, and we'll continue doing this as long as we can.
The last question, and it's a long one. Mr. Superintendent, I think you should read it because it's really long.
During the summer, the Tribune reported that the second in command of one of the largest gangs turned himself in, tired of the lifestyle. The story implied that significant information about the size and scope of the gang influence was revealed. Are you able to comment on the impact of this unexpected resource? I hate to say it, I'm not familiar with that story. We have had interesting feedback from some senior gang members. They've gotten out of jail and they've tried to get back into society. And they've actually come to us and said, you've got to do something about these young gang members. They are extraordinarily violent. They have no respect for senior gang members. Now, I know that's funny and it's easy to laugh, but think about it. These are folks who, that's their world. So you get a guy come out of a prison and he was a major player in the P-Stones. And now he's just trying to get back into the swing of things, albeit perhaps gang life, and he's terrified of these young guys who are going out there because they have no respect for life. When I was here in 2000 to 2003, most of the gangs we dealt with were focused on making money. That seemed to be a desire. Some of that has changed a little bit now. Now we'll shoot people just for a matter of respect. And I hate to say it, but if you have a gang that's simply selling drugs and they're not killing anyone, that's not on our priority list. There's far too many that are engaged with simple violence, either for respect, for whatever reason, but life has become extraordinarily cheap in some of these neighborhoods, unfortunately. And we always take advantage of intelligence, and I will make sure that our gang specialist unit, I'll go down and ask them today to see if they did take advantage of this information that this individual may have put forth. I thank you for having this opportunity to speak with all of you. It's a great crowd. It's a great opportunity. I would like to thank you for your continued support to the Chicago Police Department. And I promise you that we will always work hard to serve you and all members of this city. But it's really a privilege to be down here today, especially it's been a busy week with some of the stuff that's been going on. It's nice to take a little time out and address some great folks like you all. So thank you very much.